good evening, everyone. I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelist that covers a diverse field of retail, which includes cinema, apparel into large boxes, small and big towns, and also food. So, as the panel says, that groundbreaking to breaking grounds. So it's very fascinating that the narrative surrounding India's market dynamics is evolving. Beyond the bustling metros, there's a palpable excitement about the untapped potential and rapid growth in the country, which the smaller towns really, really have. Every market observer, consumer, and a retailer has been talking about it. Uh, both Bharat and India, we believe, holds an immense potential. So the focus today of the panel is eventually to understand that whether India and Bharat together hold that importance for each of you, or it is basically Bharat, which is the focus. And you see that probably it's an untapped potential which has an opportunity to kind of outreach India over passage of years that we have seen. And that space is rapidly picking up. And I think to set a context, I would rather want everybody just to spend a minute or two to kind of enlighten us that how you're looking at both of these segments individually for your particular organization, brand, and segment. So Sumit, maybe we can get started with you.
Hi, I'm Sumit. I'm taking care of Max division. So Max as a brand which is in value fashion, we are almost 500 plus stores in the country. And if I do a ratio out of the stores into tier 2 or tier 3 towns, almost 40 plus percent of the stores are in tier 2 towns. So answering to the answer to Preeti that how's the Bharat versus India, for us, it says one Bharat to be put in a single box where we see that with the aspirations of the tier 2 and the tier 3 town, and especially with the COVID teaching us the online business and the growing of the online business where everything is accessible to everybody. So the Bharat actually is totally has become as a Bharat in whole when it's talked to tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And if we look at the entire business scenario for us, which is a value fashion, these towns are not a towns in itself. It's also called as a feeder towns because these towns cater to a radius of around 20-30 kilometers of the small villages or small taluks and everything, because for them, these towns act as the major markets. So when we talk about Bharat as a whole, I say that it's an entire mix of tier 1, tier 2 or a tier 3 or a metro city together for our kind of a business. Of course, the business contribution of the metro and the tier 1 always would be a higher in terms of percentage, but in terms of the penetration level or in terms of the aspiration level, it's almost as equivalent to a tier 2 or a tier 1 metro town kind of a town. Yeah.
So if I add on to that, like according to me, at least from a brand point of view, for me it's India and Bharat both. And the reason I say that, being from Domino's, a 2000 store brand, when I think of India, it's been making steady progress. And for me, it is more about densification. So, for example, if I talk about cities like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, these are cities in which we have got about 150 plus stores each. But this hasn't slowed the growth that we have from a Domino's point of view. And again, when I think of Bharat, according to me, Bharat has been making progress exponentially because the aspiration of people has increased, the spending power of the people has increased. And just to give a perspective, we opened and we went to about 75 plus new cities over the last 2 years, and they have been doing amazingly well for us. And from a strategy point of view, we are very clear that we would want to focus on both. The strategy is different. We would want to densify in India, and we would want to get deeper in Bharat.
Okay. Hi, this is Biswajeet and I represent Mufti. Nationally, we got 425 odd stores and counting. As he also mentioned, the split across the country has been quite even. If you talk about metros, mini metros, A, B, and C class towns, we are kind of equally spread. And for us, it's a seamless operations across the country. So it's all integrated in one. Having said that, obviously there are challenges in every market which will be different from each other. And since we're going to focus on the C class cities more, We'll talk about them once we talk about the challenges in detail. But I think the first one to bring upfront is the entire value game or the entire turnover game, which is very important from a C-class perspective. I think I'll leave it at here because she will probably take this forward. I don't want to take her cues at this point in time. But yeah, for a C-class city, I think the turnovers are very important from a business perspective. As a brand, A, B, C are as important. So it is indicated whether it's Bharat or India. Equally important because the spread is equal and the business opportunities are also equal.
Absolutely, very interested to navigate and deep dive into this thought. So, Amit, to start with, like if you can just give us 2-3 line as how important both these terms are with respect to multiplex and
Yeah, so as my friends mentioned that it's equally important, metro and mini metro tier 2 one town are equally important for the expansion of a brand. It's the same case for the cinema also. Like 30% of the people lives in metro cities and 70% of Indian population lives in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, and everyone likes to watch movies on a larger screen. So I mean, and 50% of our cinemas are in tier 1 and tier 2 town, and 50% are in metro cities. So as I concurrence with my friends that both the India and Bharat, rest of the Bharat, both are equally important for a brand, and it has immense potential. The smaller town has immense potential in them as the increasing their disposable income with the growing economy. So these town has got immense potential, and if there is a right product, then yes, I mean, cinema can be expanded in these smaller towns.
Thank you. So, Biswajeet, I'll start with you. That you represent a brand with almost 425 stores, which has got immense reach with regards to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3s. What we understand that while we all talk about moving to these layers, but this particular layer has a limited threshold. Like there's a revenue threshold this particular layer holds. So how do you strategically look at the right RTRs, the right ROIs, and the right TDs particularly? Is there a different strategy that you look out, or how do you treat them a little different, or same with the strategy of the metros that you have as a brand?
Well, these C-class cities, if you start qualifying it further, there are a set of cities where there's already fashion existing. For example, there are few brands which are already existing. The consumers already tasted a bit of fashion. So it's always easier to get to those towns. The challenges would be little less from a consumer standpoint and also from a franchise standpoint. But when you talk about cities which have not seen much of fashion or just started because they've seen internet, they're exposed to fashion, they have seen brands, they want to procure them. However, the volumes aren't as big. So that's where the first challenge starts. You have to be present in those cities because there's a potential. But however, you will have a turnover threshold. And that's where the first challenge starts. Once you have a threshold of a turnover, the next question is the inventory and the space planning at the same time. So if you have, say, a limitation to a turnover, like for example, a or a B cities probably can, just for example, do 1 crore of business in a year. These towns would probably do a 50, 60, 70 kind of a number. So with that being a concern, then the big challenges are managing inventory for these stores and hence managing the space for these stores. Because you can't have a smaller store because you have a small town. Or you can't have a less inventory because of a small town. You will have to still fill the store. You still have to make the store look good. You still need to make the store make money. So that's where the first challenge starts in terms of managing inventory and space together in these C-class towns. So that's, and if you ask me how to mitigate that, well, it's not as easy because you still need to play with your range. You need to showcase as much as possible. You can't cut down much on the width. So there would be some compromise on the depth of the merchandise. You can't keep all options. You have to keep some options, but also not compromising with the width of the entire offering. So we'll have to make the store in a such a way, the entire look and feel the store in such a way that we are able to make it look full and also ensure that the right merchandise quantity is available. You can't overstock, you can't understock. So huge inventory and space planning challenge in these kind of stores. So I'm not sure whether same happens with food or probably other because appetite also could be limited to that extent. So the first and the foremost challenge for these markets or these cities, because of the extension that one can have on the turnover, the size of the business, would be inventory management and space management. These are my first two challenges to start with. We probably can dwell more as we go along, but I'm throwing open these two challenges. That's what we face. And to mitigate that, better space planning and better merchandise planning to ensure that we have the right width and the depth to ensure that we have the right quantities and the store also looks full. Right? Should I give an example? It'll be easy. So, for example, if you are doing, say, a business of, say, 6 lakhs a month, for example, you would need inventory according to that. And the store is 800 square feet. If you have to fill an 800 square feet, you need 2,000 pieces. With 2,000 pieces, if you fill a store, you probably need a much larger turnover. Your turnover is just 6 lakhs a month, and 2,000 is an overkill. So how do you balance that? So balancing is between how you're able to display and how you're able to replenish. If you're able to manage these two challenges, then the inventory and space planning challenge is mitigated.
So I'll come in on this from
Please,
I'll
please go
come in
ahead.
on this from a food point of view, right? Like for me, my back of the kitchen remains same, irrespective of whether we open a store in Delhi or in Nagpur or in any other single city that we want to venture into. The difference is the rentals are lower. So when I expand into Bharat, my profitability improves because rentals are lower. But at one point in time, the thought was that whether we should build grand stores, do we believe that we will be able to get dine in from that point of view? I mean, if we build grand stores, will more people come in? And what we have realized is that Bharat does need good stores, bigger stores, because people are aspirational, right? So when I'm building a Domino's store, I see people coming in there from an aspirational point of view. And if we build basic stores with a small kitchen and let's say a very limited seating, you actually kill that aspiration, and hence it becomes very important.
So, since you picked up the topic of Bharat having a lot of potential with regards to food, and in particular to Domino's, I want to ask. See, while during the COVID, I understand you must have opened like a lot of stores because delivery was the hero. However, how do you see the effect of reverse migration? Do you think that you see an impact on your business?
So honestly, we thought it would be big, right? Like post COVID, it was a stress for everybody. Nobody knew what actually would happen. Reverse migration did happen, but what in parallel happened was that the overall consumption in tier 3 towns, tier 2 towns also increased. So cities like Noida, Delhi, Mumbai, they increased. So we saw an increase in consumption. But in parallel, when we went to the tier 3 cities or Bharat as we call it, we did not see a reduction there. So it helped us.
Well, there's another line of question I want to ask, but I'll reserve it to come back to you. Amit, back to you that, I must say that as a multiplex, you've never been shy of small towns. I think the first multiplex that Cinepolis opened was Amritsar. And if I name
That's
few towns, probably you're there in Panipat, Bhatinda, Hubli, Nagpur, and I think you've never seen that as a challenge. Rather, I think you took that as a stepping ground. So what is you're a little different than a vanilla. Like, so I'm sure that the multiplex do not have an opportunity to walk to a high street and decide that, I'll open this store. So what is the kind of challenge or probably an ecosystem that you look forward in these kind of towns and cities or opportunities that you feel are still, they require to be addressed?
Sure. So, as you rightly mentioned, that Cinepolis has never been shy of investing in tier two or smaller towns. As I initially said, that 50% of our stores are in tier one and tier two towns. Basically, what we have faced challenge in these towns is the ecosystem that the developers provide us. Now we cannot go into high street and open the cinema. For cinema, we need to have the proper licenses, and it requires a clear height of 10 to 12 meter, depending on the sizes of the auditoriums. So, on a high street, cinema is not an affordable for a developer also, because cinema cannot pay that kind of high rental that a departmental store can pay. But we face that generally in the smaller town, the developer do not have the holding capacity of the real estate. What they generally develop the real estate and then they sell those real estate shop by shop and exit out of the project. So that put a challenge on the sustainability of that project. So what we have seen in the long term, what happens these and after COVID especially, what we have seen that these kind of centers has affected the most. The centers which were lease-based model and were controlled by the developer, they have recovered faster, and the recovery in the centers which were strata sale and where the maintenance is at the in the hands of the owners association, uh, I mean the dip is much larger in those centers and the recovery is also slower, and we foresee that they may never be able to achieve the potential which was there prior to COVID. So these kind of the ecosystem, that what we see is the main challenge in tier 1 and 2 towns. And second is the apart from this strata sale or the holding of the real estate by the developer, second is the right product mix. So what we see that I mean, for cinema, I think a center should be at least 2.5 or 3 lakh square feet. Generally, in smaller town, we find that we get a lot of projects which are like 100,000 square feet of the development, 150,000 square feet of the development, very small floor plate. So on those, as my friend said, the investment is the same, but then the return gets compromised. So I think infrastructure is one thing that we face challenge in tier 1 and tier 2 town.
So I think what I take a thread is that a right center with the right tenants and sustainability. So actually, it's the winner that the project and the multiplex have to be together. So Sumit, coming back to you, that have almost 500 stores. Again, that your brand has particularly earned a reputation to serve fashion to the value width of the country. And how is your strategy between the A and B so far? And how do you look forward? Because we have been really hearing a lot of big box penetrations into emerging markets. Usually when the vanilla is a little shy to go and do that experiment, but we've seen a lot of big boxes, standing tall, doing and being successful. So what is your strategy towards it?
See, so Preeti, in terms of big boxes, or I'll say as a mini anchor categories, when we talk about tier 2 or tier 3 towns, so because what I see as a strategy, we would like to expand because the hinterland of the country has that potential as what we have been talking about. But the only challenging part for us comes in terms of what my friends have already mentioned. It's a quality development because I am a brand which goes into high street also. I am not limited only to a mall or a mall development. I open up high street. Almost 50% of my stores are high street. It's not dependent on the mall. So, but in case of high street also, I face a challenge of getting that kind of a size box with the right fixtures and the right kind of a specifications of facade and the height and everything. So my route is only goes either I go to a BDS kind of sign, which is a build to suit. I wait for 12 months, 18 months, kind of getting it ready. Even if I get a high street which is matching somewhat the specification, the compliance plays a very pivotal role for us. Because most of these tier 2 or a tier 3 towns have those challenges of compliances or the permissions not in place or not partially done, partially not done, deviations and all this. So this is a big challenge which comes in. Now, my kind of format, I don't have a much more of maneuvering here and there in terms of size of the store. I can order it by 10-15% because fashion is a category which we have to have the entire category into the store, which is if I go into a range segment in terms of men formals, when casuals and women casuals and everything. So I cannot compromise on category. But yeah, as we have been discussing about, inventory plays a pivotal role. So we have to balance that inventory in this kind of tier 2 and tier 3 house because my inventory in terms of stock has a life of 90 days. 90 days it's out of season. Then it has a new inventory which has to be replenished in the store. So these two challenges of compliances and getting the right box size is a big challenge which comes into tier 2 and tier 3. And I'm not limiting myself to a mall or a mall development because I'm a high street brand also. But in case of a high street also, the challenges of compliances are very amicable in terms of when we talk about tier 2 or tier 3 town. And most of the properties which we get out over there are at a compromise in somewhat in terms of sanctions or in terms of getting the permission. So this is a big challenge for us in terms of not entering into. But if you ask me as a brand, wanting to go to the hinterland of the country, yes, we are still expanding into the hinterland of the country. if I see a ratio of my tier 2 or tier 3, almost we're going to be hitting 50% of the mix of stores which are going to be in tier 2 and tier 3. So that's what the plan is right now also.
So we're taking a step ahead from where you left, since you're a fashion brand and catering to a consumer which is fashion savvy, fashion friendly, and thanks to e-commerce, where we might say small towns and the rest of India. However, the aspiration is just as mirror as anybody sitting off a metro. So, and like what we spoke, and I'll come back to Biswajeet on that, that we have a threshold of revenues. So is there a different format that you have with regards to capex? Do you do a little watered down cost, or is it strategically same? And how do you take care of that?
Capex is mildly, I would not say majorly shifted, but it has a shift in terms of when we talk. See, we have categorization of stores in terms of look and feel, where we say flagship, we say economical, or we say a medium kind of thing. If you're going to a premium mall in a metro city, it will have a different kind of a look and feel. It's primarily to do with the more of VM elements and the video walls and more of usage of videos and everything and those kind of LEDs in the store versus a small town. See, in a small town also, I have to keep a balance in terms of the look and feel, keeping my international into consideration also, but not being very, very high ended also, because still in tier 2 or tier 3 town, which also the feeder towns around it, which are small villages, do have this mindset. If the showroom is very jazzy, they do hesitate in coming in also with the mindset that it might be expensive. Though this mindset is changing over a period of last 2-3 years because of thanks to e-commerce, because now they have an access to having the view of all these online platforms and knowing what the brand and what the price range are. But there's a capex difference, and we are moderating it in the form of it should not be a very compromised kind of thing. It's to do with the look and feel in terms of a VM and LEDs and the video walls or the graphics which we are using in terms of a high-end mode. That's the only difference. But in terms of look and feel, the essence is the core is the same.
Biswajeet, coming back to you while we were talking about revenues. And when we talk about these small towns, we talk about the right location, the right size, the right capex, the right rentals. One topic that I think we've always missed in these forums is the right partner. So, while, you penetrate into these kind of smaller layers, how important is the franchise partnership with you guys? Because I think on these regional level, a lot of business happens because of the relationships. So, having a right partner is also equally important. So if you can just throw your light at that, what is the model you are operating out of? What is the ratio of FOFOs and COFOs? And what is the kind of guardrails that you look at, when you're appointing franchisees?
A pretty pertinent question. I think franchisee is the key in these cities. You may have the best of locations and not a great franchise, you're finished. Because I think for years together we have heard location, location, location. But if you talk about C class cities or the upcoming cities or towns, it's franchisee, 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 or partner, partner, partner. It's all driven by relationships. Consumers vouch for people there. They not only vouch for franchisee, but the team that he puts in. So relationship is the key. Franchisee is the most important. It depends on how actively is he involved. Not only how is he invested in terms of money, but how actively is he involved. How much is he able to get from his team. I think for us, all our C class, B and C class markets are managed by franchisees. We hardly have COCO stores because impossible to manage them. Every city has its nuance in terms of buying behavior, in terms of timing of the buying. People there buy with names. I have come to meet so and so. People there don't understand the product as much as they understand people. They do understand fashion, but then they understand people more than anything else. So franchisee and whatever it brings on table is the most crucial aspect of these markets, and it will remain so for a lot of brands who are a lot of vanilla brands for sure, who obviously will not be able to manage a large turnover like a department store or hypermarket, but otherwise a single brand franchisee is and will remain the key.
I've been already showed it's 5 minutes. So this is last question that I want to throw to the panel, and anybody of you can pick up and address. We've been talking and we've been listening a lot of retail towards these religious cities due to the spike in the pilgrim tourism. So how are you looking at, and is it advantageous? I'm sure for for Jubilant it might be quite an opportunity, but individually, anybody of you can just say that. How are you looking at? Is it like an overhyped opportunity, and are they ready? Because there are no literally numbers or benchmarks to kind of gauge the revenue. So what is your opinion about this kind of a splurge that all the brands are looking at?
See, Preeti, to be very honest, it's all cities are categorized into tier 2 or tier 3. So saying that it's a religious city, it will be having a different dynamics. But nobody has tested those
I'm
waters
sorry, on a
yet.
lighter note, I've been seeing Ayodhya on a lot of AOPs in
But
this year, so hence I'm mentioning this.
Yeah, I'll put it in a different way. I'll put it a city which has more of transit into it, more of tourism into it, and more of floating into it. So it has to be treated as good as any other city which has a lot of transit or tourism or floaters coming in and everything. I'll put it the same thing in another way. So there are cities which are also called as educational cities, where usually colleges, institutions play a dominating role. And we know a colleges, institution, every 2 years, 3 years, we have fresh intake of students coming in, passing out and everything. There's a lot of churn, which is good churn, which is happening every 2 years, 3 years. So I would say that every city has to be looked in this bucket only as a floater versus a tourism versus calling it as only a religious city might be impacting for Jubilant for a food categorization or a limitation, but for a fashion, value fashion, I think it's as good as a city of a tier 2 or tier 3.
So I guess Sumit being an ex-Jubilant guy, he's already answered my question, but I'll add to it. See, for us, it is very important, right? Because when you talk about tourism, be it religious tourism or otherwise, you mean more consumption, right? So we are definitely thinking of this, and it is a priority for us. In a lot of cities, you would also see us opening vegetarian restaurants, right? Because it's the ask of the city. So for us, we are definitely focused, and as you said, Ayodhya, we are already building a couple of stores there, and you would see many more stores wherever such opportunities arise. So from a food point of view, definitely yes, but maybe from a cinema point of view, and my friends here can talk about it, that might not be very relevant because tourists are there in that city for a day or a two.
For a
It might,
purpose.
yeah, it's for a purpose, right?
I like to add on this. In fact, we thought that probably the tourist would mean that he was not going to consume, especially in religious places. So we tried that in Puri very recently, and believe you me or not, that's the second biggest city in terms of single store sale after Bhubaneswar. Is doing better than Katak, and that's a pleasant surprise for us. We didn't intend opening it that way, but we wanted to try out somewhere where we have a lot of floating population. So we tried that out and it's doing phenomenally well. So
That's very interesting.
yeah,
Katak, I agree, because I think Katak is divided into two pockets of retail, and it really lacks still that infrastructure what an organized retail requires. So I'm with him on that. And
As Sumit rightly mentioned, that it has to be treated like any other city, whether a religious or a regular city. So I mean, that's how we do our analysis of a regional city. Yes.
so quite an interesting, very little time given on this interesting topic. I mean, like when we spoke about the revenue thresholds, there's so much that we could talk about, people on the floor, which is actually the moment of truth for any retailer. But maybe with the given time, we'll have to reserve it for later. And thank you very much. What we conclude is that, the holy grain to this small towns is just begin, but there is a set of lot of opportunities and challenges that that this belt holds. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.